The age of exploration is universally taught as a romantic era of noble heroes bravely mapping the edges of the unknown. But the historical reality was an absolute nightmare of starvation, terrifying disease, and pure economic desperation. Europeans didn't sail into the terrifying abyss out of curiosity. They were violently forced into the ocean by a massive geopolitical crisis. For centuries, Europe relied entirely on the legendary Silk Road to import highly lucrative spices, silk, and medicine from Asia.
But in 1453, the world completely changed. The Ottoman Empire conquered Constantinople, violently severing the ancient land routes to the east.
The Ottomans and the powerful merchants of Venice established a ruthless, absolute monopoly over the remaining maritime spice trade. Prices skyrocketed exponentially. Simple commodities like black pepper and nutmeg became literally as valuable as their exact weight in pure solid gold. Europe was rapidly bleeding all of its precious silver to the east. Western nations were facing total, catastrophic economic collapse. Cut off entirely from the Mediterranean wealth, the small, impoverished kingdom of Portugal had only one. Traditional European ships were heavy, clumsy, and completely incapable of sailing against the wind. They were useless for deep ocean exploration.
The Portuguese engineered a technological masterpiece, the Caravel, a highly maneuverable, lightweight ship. For the very first time in European history, ships could successfully zigzag directly against the wind. Combined with the astrolabe to measure latitude from the stars, and the magnetic compass. But brilliant technology couldn't cure the absolute psychological terror of the crew. To a 15th century sailor, the
maps were filled with terrifying warnings of massive sea serpents and krakens that could effortlessly snap a ship completely in half.
It took decades of failed attempts, desperate mutinies, and absolute terror before a Portuguese...
Inch by inch, year by agonizing year, they mapped the western coast of Africa, completely driven by the desperate search for a sea route to India. But they found something else first. They tapped directly into the incredibly rich, heavily guarded gold networks of West Africa.
And alongside the gold, the age of discovery took a horrifying, permanent turn into absolute darkness.
By the mid-1400s, the Portuguese initiated the brutal, systematic transatlantic slave trade. And to fiercely protect their new monopolies on gold and human lives, they built massive, impenetrable stone fortresses along the African coast.
Meanwhile, the explorers pushed further south. But life aboard these small wooden ships was a claustrophobic. In the warm waters, terrifying shipworms would literally eat the wooden hulls of the ships from the outside in. But the absolute greatest enemy wasn't storms or pirates. It was a severe vitamin C deficiency known as scurvy.
Entire crews were completely decimated. Over 2 million sailors would agonizingly die from scurvy during the Age of Discovery. Battered by rogue waves and hurricane winds for 13 days, he appropriately named it the Cape of Storms. He had successfully rounded Africa, but his terrified, starving crew violently mutinied, forcing him to turn back before reaching India. Portugal's massive success terrified their fiercely ambitious neighbors. The newly united Kingdom of Spain desperately wanted in on the spice trade.
Enter an ambitious Italian navigator named Christopher Columbus. Everyone educated already knew the Earth was a sphere.
Instead of sailing thousands of miles around Africa, he proposed sailing directly west into the absolute The royal mathematicians completely rejected him. Using ancient Greek estimates, they had correctly calculated. Columbus had made a catastrophic mathematical error. He believed the Earth was vastly smaller than it is. But Spain was incredibly desperate to beat Portugal. Ignoring the math, the Queen financed 3 tiny, utterly ill-equipped ships.
In August 1492, they sailed directly into the abyss. For weeks, they saw absolutely nothing but an endless, terrifying expanse of water.
They were days away from turning back or starving to death in the open sea, when suddenly they spotted
October 12th, 982, Landfall. Columbus had officially survived the most incredibly fortunate...
They were met by the indigenous Taino people, 2 entirely different halves of the human race, violently separated.
But Columbus was entirely blinded by his own theories.
He aggressively demanded to know where the Emperor of China and the massive spice markets were.
He went to his grave completely refusing to accept that he had actually stumbled upon an entirely new, undocumented continent.
With the explorers came an invisible apocalypse. European diseases, like smallpox, utterly...
The shocking news reached Europe, instantly spreading like wildfire through the newly invented printing press.
With a single stroke of a pen, he literally cut the entire undiscovered planet perfectly in half, giving one side to Spain and the other to Portugal.
But Portugal still hadn't reached the ultimate prize, India. In 1497, the ruthless Vasco da Gama...
He executed a brilliant, terrifying maneuver. He sailed thousands of miles out into the open Atlantic.
May 1498, they finally arrived at Calicut, India, the absolute epicenter of global wealth and the ultimate prize of the entire century.
But it was an incredibly humiliating encounter. The immensely wealthy Indian king openly laughed at the cheap...
Through force, they secured a massive cargo of spices. They had successfully bypassed the Ottomans and the Venetians completely.
The return journey was an absolute nightmare. Da Gama lost half his ships and over half his crew to disease.
But the cargo of spices on that single surviving ship was so incredibly valuable, it paid for the entire catastrophic expedition 60 times over. Almost overnight, the ancient Mediterranean economy completely collapsed. The Venetian and Ottoman monopolies were instantly rendered worthless. Though Magellan died on the journey, his surviving crew successfully circumnavigated the entire globe, physically.
But the greatest impact wasn't gold. It was the Columbian Exchange. A massive, permanent...
Crops from the New World, like the humble potato and the tomato, completely revolutionized European diets and prevented mass starvation. And European horses completely transformed the culture and hunting methods of the indigenous tribes in the Americas forever.
The geopolitical center of gravity permanently shifted. The Mediterranean was abandoned, and the Atlantic Ocean began. In less than a century, the isolated pockets of humanity were permanently, aggressively connected to
This massive influx of global wealth directly birthed modern capitalism, joint stock companies, and the incredibly powerful empires of the future.
It was the absolute dawn of the modern world. But it was paid for entirely in blood, disease, and...
The Age of Discovery was not a romantic adventure.
It was a desperate, terrifying gamble, fueled by pure economic necessity. A world completely reshaped by the overwhelming, addictive desire for a handful of exotic seeds.
The explorers charted the unknown, but they also unleashed forces that could never be undone.
We live today in the exact world they aggressively carved out of the darkness.
A legacy of incredible bravery, built on a foundation of profound tragedy. From the terrifying edge of the map to the birth of the modern world, what historical era should we reconstruct next? If you want to use AI to uncover the brutal, incredible, true history behind the world's greatest myths, hit the subscribe button.
Let us know in the comments below which explorer or historical event you find the most fascinating.
Thanks for watching, and keep seeking the truth.
With the light extinguished, the secrets of the ancient world return once more to the darkness.